What's good, Savages? Welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Sports. I'm Savage Paulson, and with me, as always, is the sports aficionado, Zach McGibbon. What's going on, Zach?
I'm liking this trend. You're changing up. It's sports expert, aficionado, guru. I love it. I love these different nicknames you got.
I'll be honest, I just asked ChatGPT to give me a list of 10 names that I could name someone that's really knowledgeable in sports, and it just spits. I just go down the list every week.
You check it off. It's like, all right, I said this week. We're going to get this one next week, right?
My vocabulary stops after expert and guru. I'm like, all right, that's about the synonyms I know for expert. So let's try to find something else. Busy week in the last 2 weeks. We haven't done an episode in 2 weeks, so it's been I thought it would be quiet at this time of year, but I've been busy myself. But I've been paying attention to a lot of sports things. The last time we spoke, it was the Four Nations face-off was just in its completion. NFL, free agent season was kind of kicking off. Now it's like we're getting with the combine and everything happening. So we'll start there with the NFL. The last few days, the last week, there's a lot of news that's broke down. There's the Deebo Samuels to the Commanders that I want to talk about. There's also what we saw yesterday with Geno Smith getting traded to the Raiders. And what does that mean for the Seahawks? But more importantly, what does that mean for the Raiders? So let's start here. The first thing I want to bring up, because I guess it was the thing that happened early in the week, or was it last week, was the Deebo Samuels to the Commanders. I remember my son showing me it's like, look at this. And I went, no way, that's because, online, sometimes on Instagram, you go like, it's not real. That's fake. It's rumors. Yeah. And then after that, I saw it was real. I was like, in your opinion, I'll ask you, because you're the aficionado in here. Does this make the Commanders a Super Bowl favorite? No, I wouldn't say Super Bowl favorite, but do you think they can make a deep playoff run with Deebo Samuels?
It would be interesting. I'm kind of in between. Obviously, we saw them make the deep run into the NFC Championship this past year, and we just saw what Jaden Daniels can do. This is obviously a move to try and enforce that wide receiver core instead of just having it be Terry McLaurin. Deebo Samuel, he's one of those interesting players where when he was utilized in San Francisco, not only was he a wide receiver, but they would like to have him run the ball as well, and they would have different sort of formations to try and utilize his skill set. What made it interesting with this trade for me was the fact that they only gave up a 5th-round pick for Deebo Samuel.
Right.
That was quite shocking. Like, we know it's become a trend in the NFL the last little bit where you have receivers, we'll call them veteran receivers, guys that have played in the league for a few years.
Right.
They're not being traded for, 2nd, 3rd-round selections. They're getting traded for, 4th, 5th-round picks. So I think that's what the thought process was. And, there had been talks in San Francisco. It seemed like for years that Deebo wasn't going to be there too much longer when trying to negotiate a contract. Right. There was the issue on, they were trying to maybe sign him to be a running back. And when you're a running back in the NFL, you make less than a wide receiver. So there was all this stuff. And with San Francisco, they're still talking about potentially trading Brandon Ayuk as well, which would be interesting to see what that goes down in San Francisco. But in the case of Deebo Samuel, I think this is, for a 5th-round selection and, just solidifying that wide receiver core that Washington needs, really, to kind of get more players. Like, Zacchaeus is not exactly going to be your wide receiver, too, for much longer. I think he exceeded expectations, but right. If you have him in a wide receiver 3, you should be okay. But yeah, I like this Deebo Samuel pickup for the Commanders, just from a team aspect, because I think that will work out for Washington really, really well, giving more options for your young quarterback. And that's also part of the strategy you see with a lot of these NFL teams. They try and find that young quarterback, and they've got him on a rookie deal. And if they can get a guy on a rookie deal that can at least show that they can play, it's like, all right, while we have this guy on a rookie deal, we are going to load up on our offensive core. We're going to try and get all the wide receivers, all the weapons that we can get, solidify the offensive line. We saw that a few years ago with the Cincinnati Bengals when they went to the Super Bowl. Burrow was still under his rookie contract, but they were able to get guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all those guys to be in their wide receiver core. Jared Goff to an extent as well with the Rams. They really loaded up there as well and tried to get ready. So I think that's the strategy that Washington is taking right now. Is like, okay, we know we've got a guy and we know he could take us very far already in his first year. Let's try and load up and try and take advantage while we have him on a rookie contract.
Is Debo a difference maker enough to make that much of an impact, you think, on the Commanders? Because, look, I know he's a great player, great wide receiver, and we've seen some greatness in him in the 49ers. And part of me thinks that I just think it wasn't a good fit anymore within the 49ers scheme for him. But, like, I've seen this before where, like, people talk about certain wide receiver like they're in the top 5 or the top 10 in the league, and then I get the I don't know why I hate to say this, but I get the same feeling as like a Stephon Diggs, you know, like everybody's talking about how great he is, and I've always been like, is he? You know, like, is he? Because, like, I mean, the Bills were better without him. Like, I could argue that fact, I think. And so I think that you're right. The Commanders need to build as much offense, considering that they do have Daniels on a rookie contract, and they need to take advantage of that. And I guess we'll see how they draft as well. Like, they might be bolstering up on the offensive line to try to protect him as much as possible. But at first, when I saw the Debo trade, I was like, Super Bowl right away. And then it kind of simmered, and I went like, I mean, they were really good last year, and McLaurin is a really good receiver. So, yes, it's going to help, but is it enough to push them within the next 2 to 3 years to making the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I don't think in the case of the Commander, it's the one move is going to take them over the top. I think it's just going to be continuing to build on different fronts, but I certainly think it will help them. I think with Debo, you know, Ayuk was sort of escalating into that first wide receiver 1 role, but Debo for a time, like, he was that guy where it's like you had to watch out for not only when he would go out and catch passes, but also the different kind of plays that they would utilize Debo in terms of in motion,
right,
and whatnot. I don't know if Debo is still that same caliber of player, and where he was had that explosiveness like he did in the first couple of years, and then, you know, there was the critiques this past year as well. Like, he had some really bad drops during the year as well. And so I think there's all of that to kind of consider with Debo Samuel. But I certainly like it from I'm giving him a 5th round pick perspective,
right,
and seeing what I've got in Debo. And I know what he's been able to produce in the past. Can he continue that? And I think he's still in his late 20s. So it's not like, you know, this guy's 35 and can't produce anymore.
Absolutely.
I think there's still some years ahead. But it certainly will be interesting how they kind of utilize him in the offense once he gets fully acclimated.
From one wide receiver to another, I'll bring you to this. DK Metcalf requested a trade from the Seahawks, which shocked me and didn't shock me. I think he was underutilized last year. I think Enigma came out and was really big surprise last year. I think he was more productive than a lot of people thought he would be. And now I've heard, my son is a Seahawks fan, so I get some news through him, and he thinks that DK won't be traded, that he'll just play out the last year of his contract. Considering a 5th round draft pick for Debo Samuels, what's the market for DK Metcalf? And are there suitors that you think is there a team that would benefit a guy like, I can name a few. Steelers, number 1.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yep.
I can only imagine him, Pickens, and, you know, like, it would definitely help. There's definitely other teams. I'm not a Steelers fan, so I'll think of the Steelers. Do you think it just is a negotiating tactic from DK Metcalf? Is he trying to get paid, or is he just unhappy with Geno Smith? I mean, this was announced, I believe, before Geno Smith, but I'm sure there was already talk about it, and he was probably in the know about it. So what are your thoughts on this? Is he worth more than a 5th round draft pick for Debo Samuels, and can he make a difference on someone else's team?
I would definitely, you know, wager to guess that he would probably go for higher than a 5th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think there might be a couple of picks that might be thrown in there, not like 3rd, 2nd, or anything like that.
Right.
But if it was like a 4th and a 5th, I could totally see that. The thing with a lot of these veteran contracts you're seeing now is that what you're really giving up the 4th, 5th round pick to take on a contract as opposed to getting the player. And they really do view trying to find young players in the draft more highly in recent years. But in the case of DK Metcalf, he's a guy that has been consistent over the last couple of years. There's never been talk about any sort of down point in his career. And he's had really productive years with guys that You know, he had late stage Russell Wilson for his run. He also had Geno Smith, obviously, and Geno has been a pleasant surprise for this Seattle Seahawks team. He turned in a Pro Bowl season, and you know, getting comparisons like now, Rich Gannon ended up being the MVP of the league one year, but similar to where a career-long backup guy, all of a sudden he just goes to a new team and just all of a sudden something clicks and he finally is able to reach that full potential that people thought he could reach. And that's kind of what I saw with Geno. And with DK Metcalf, it was interesting because Tyler Lockett has already been cut by the Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
They're already moving on from him. So based on what I'm reading, it sounds like they're committed to moving on from DK. Steelers, you mentioned that's a good team that could utilize a DK Metcalf. The other team I was thinking of is the New England Patriots to really help Drake May. I think that would be the Patriots. I feel like I've been saying for years they've needed some sort of wide receiver one option, and they've never been able to either get one in the draft or sign somebody. They've always kind of just gotten guys.
Right.
So having a guy in DK
it's been
Metcalf
a few
years
receiver since they've had a really good wide receiver one, no? The Patriots?
It's probably, I mean, I wouldn't count Gronk as a wide receiver one, but like a primary target that you can rely on. I mean, you could easily go back to 07 with Randy Moss. And,
that's the only one I can remember. I'm like, who else after Randy Moss? There was Edelman. That was, I mean,
I wouldn't call Edelman a wide receiver one, though.
Right. He wasn't one, but he did. I remember seeing his name a lot when Brady was in his prime, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, it's weird, no, that you have a team like that just has, because even right now, I couldn't even name you who their wide receiver one is right now.
Yeah. I was gonna say Jacoby Myers, but he's now on the Raiders, so it's not him. So, I mean, yeah, they've really just kind of gotten some guys. There's not really that big standout wide receiver, and I can tell you, just hearing from some Patriots fans that I know, they really, really want to have DK Metcalf on their squad.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, they really want him. Just hearing from Patriots fans, so it'd be interesting if he gets traded there. So that's the one that kind of sticks out in my mind, but. Yeah, I was a little surprised too, but the way that it's going, and that might also lead into the Geno Smith stuff, but it sounds like for me, a lot of what's happening in Seattle, despite the fact that they, won 10 games last year, that they might be just looking at it and saying, all right, I think it's time to move on and we're going to go a different direction and with the team and try and rebuild it, because I think there's still the Pete Carroll elements of the team, and I think they just want to move forward from it.
So let's talk about the Geno Smith trade to the Raiders. That's when I knew right there that I was like, okay, are the Seahawks rebuilding this? Like, they're like, obviously they either have some sort of plan, or it's just like, all right, let's start fresh with some young guys. But then you look at what they got back from it and you go like, well, that doesn't really help them get better right away. It's not like they got a first round draft pick for any of these guys. So let's move from the Seahawks and move to the Raiders. Like, how big is this for the Raiders to have a quarterback like Geno Smith, to sign Max Crosby to their contract? Like, are they heading in the right direction?
I think this is kind of one of those deals. Pete Carroll's there now, so it makes it different. This time around when it comes to, I think Pete Carroll, you see this a lot with veteran coaches. They like their guys that they rely on. Mm-hmm. And Geno Smith was somebody in that Pete Carroll era. And so I think they've decided to make a move to make a bridge quarterback with Geno Smith, and who's Pete Carroll relies on, likes a lot, and thinks could do some stuff with him, right? So it's interesting that, there was a proposal apparently that the Seahawks tried to trade Geno Smith and DK Metcalf to the Raiders for Max Crosby.
Right, I saw that.
Which is interesting because I don't think that's a ludicrous trade in my mind, actually. Like, Max Crosby's a great player, and I think he's obviously one of the key players for the Raiders. But when you got a guy in Metcalf and Smith going over and going to be familiarized with Pete Carroll and what he wants to do for that Raiders squad,
right?
That's kind of interesting that they decide not to go with that. Obviously, it shows how highly they think of Max Crosby.
That's what I was going to say.
That record contract, and
I think they love him over there, and I think he embodies what Raiders are. That's what I like about Max Crosby. It's like, you think about the Raiders, you think about their fan base, you think about how roughneck, I guess you want to call them. Like they're just a rough and tough team from the 80s to that. They just want to beat you up. I feel like Max Crosby could be the face of that franchise easily. And the thing with Geno Smith for me is just like, can he win you a championship? It's hard to say, oh, absolutely. And maybe it's a bridge between that and drafting a young quarterback. Because, I mean, where are the Raiders? The Raiders drafting in the top 10, no?
I think they're certainly around that top 15
They're 6.
slot.
They're drafting 6. So
there you go.
Mock Draft right now has them, on ESPN has them drafting Ashton Genty from Boise State as a running back, right? And I've also heard rumors of Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter being obviously back in the past, but I don't think they'll make it down to number 6, but you never know, right?
Yep.
So yeah, very interesting, because you think of the Seahawks, and like you mentioned earlier, you look at their season last year, and I was shocked that they didn't make the playoffs with 10-win season. I was like, I obviously the division that they play in, but still, I thought they were a playoff team at the beginning of the season. I thought they were going to make a playoff run, maybe win even a playoff game. I thought Geno Smith had played well enough the following year, the previous year, and I thought with DK Metcalf and the young wide receiver core, I thought they would go, but I guess they were given 1 year and then the management just said, no, we're going to start off fresh.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what it is. Like, you know, you kind of look at previous years and you say, oh, well, they were successful here. Why are they moving on? But sometimes with organizations, especially when it's guys that have been in the organization a while, you get new people in there and they just want their people in. Right. And I think that's what's going on with Seattle is like, I think they want to fully move on from the Pete Carroll era. They want to move on from all the things that you could associate with Pete Carroll and say, okay, this is our team. And they are probably looking ahead and looking at the future of that team is like, oh, with what the players that we have right now and what we've got, like, how does the future look with what we've got right now? And I think they said to themselves, we're probably not winning a Super Bowl with this core. Mm-hmm. So might as well like go now, trade these guys while there's still some value to them, right? And then start anew and let's build our own new foundation under our vision and start anew. Because that's what it screams to me with all these moves. With Metcalf demanding the trade and Geno Smith leaving, obviously Lockett being cut, which makes sense. But all of that, it screams to me that the Seahawks are thinking of rebuilding and wanting to rebuild into their own image here.
Let's stick to the quarterback talk. What do you think this means now as far as other quarterbacks that are quote unquote available either by trade or free agency? Let's say Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers. Like, does this settle the dust a little bit with this trade? So the Raiders are out of it. So who else are we talking about that can be looking for a quarterback? Obviously, the Seahawks could be looking for a quarterback. I've seen Sam Darnold's name attached to them this morning or late last night. Aaron Rodgers, like, who's going to want to take a chance on him? That's where my head's at. It's like, he didn't see much from him last year. And I know the Jets are always dysfunctional.
Yep.
And maybe that's what it was, but I also think Aaron Rodgers is old and he's not the quarterback he used to be. Like, it's that simple. Any thoughts on the available quarterbacks or teams making move within the next week before the draft?
I certainly think it opens up the possibility of Sam Darnold going to the Seahawks. The Vikings sound like they want to re-sign Darnold, and I don't blame them. When you know what kind of success you're getting from a guy out there, you want to kind of stick with that. And so, and it sounds like Sam Darnold's well liked in the locker room and whatnot, and obviously helping lead to a 14-2 season. So there's a lot there that I still think Darnold will get back to the Vikings somehow, some way. I think they will negotiate a deal. I don't think it's gonna be like a long-term deal or anything like that. I think it'll be like a 2-3 year deal, and pay him a good amount. Pay him for the season that he had.
Isn't it funny you could have a 14-2 season and still not have an assurance of a job the next fucking season?
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
It blew when I saw this. And you know what's worse? I understand when you look at the last couple of games in the season and you go like, yeah, we won 14 games, but when it really mattered, we couldn't rely on him. And then you go, but you're still 14-2. Like, if I had a team that I was coaching that was 14-2, like, I wouldn't even think twice. I'm like, dude, sign him to a 1 year or a 2 year contract. Like, what the fuck? The guy won 14 games.
Well, it goes back to different players' situations, right? Like, in the case of the Vikings, their expectations based on the talent level that they have is we got to go deep in the playoffs. Like, their defense is tremendous, and they've got Justin Jefferson, and you know, like that's a team that's got to get to the next round and go deep into the playoffs. But I agree with you; it's hilarious. The guy won 14 games. He exceeded much more than what people thought he was going to do, and there's still just those 2 games.
You're right.
2 games, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know. I think it's still a little too soon, you know? Like, you can't entirely rule it out. Like, I hate to give praise to the Philadelphia Eagles, as you know.
Right.
But in the last, when the Eagles got eliminated in the first round by the Buccaneers, they were on a massive losing streak, and Jalen Hurts looked awful. If we were going to run with the logic that they had over during that season, it's like, fire the head coach, Jalen Hurts isn't the answer, blah, blah, blah. We would, send everybody out of Philadelphia. But you saw the year after that, they win the Super Bowl, right? So you can't get too crazy with, a bad stretch or a bad season, because next thing you know, in the case of the Eagles, they're able to go and win a Super Bowl. So I'm not saying in this case that the Vikings will win the Super Bowl this year or anything like that. I'm just saying you can't be hitting the panic button after 2 games, especially when what we saw from Sam Darnold and how he was able to adapt in that offense for Minnesota is tremendous. I don't think he's going to go to Seattle. I'm trying to think of like other teams that could go to free agency and say, okay, we're going to get our quarterback here, because a lot of the quarterbacks that are available, I look at, I just see, bridge quarterbacks at best, like guys that you can rely to go out there and win you some football games, and maybe you go into the draft, you find somebody in the 4th or 5th round, the 3rd round potentially, and develop a quarterback behind them and see what they've got. So that's kind of how I view, with the Raiders getting Geno Smith. I think that's also one of the things that they want to do there is they got a reliable quarterback, and then they can go into the draft and develop somebody. But and Aaron Rodgers is a funny one, because I hope, fingers crossed, he goes to the New York Giants.
Really?
I really hope he goes to the New York Giants, because that would be absolute comedy for him to stay in New York. And because I think the Giants are so desperate right now to try and find something, because they butchered the Saquon Barkley stuff, and kept Daniel Jones. We saw what happened there. Daniel Jones no longer there, and I think they are delusional enough where they think, oh, we just need the one guy, and why not Aaron Rodgers, because he's a veteran, and we got to make ourselves look good here, because we made ourselves look really bad this past year. So I think I could see the Giants making a desperation play to try and get Aaron Rodgers, to try and get some stability at quarterback, because the bet didn't pay off for them at all in terms of keeping Daniel Jones. And now they're stuck in a point where, as an organization, they feel that they've developed enough to be a playoff team. They think they need that one quarterback to get them over the hump, and I really don't think so. Like, you just look at everything with the Giants, that's a team that should just, do what the Seahawks are doing, and what I think the Seahawks are doing is blow it up and start anew. But they've kept their GM, they've kept their head coach. They fully believe that this is those two can lead them to success.
Right.
So I think they're going to be desperate and get somebody like an Aaron Rodgers, try and fill in that void. And, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to move very far, going from the New York Jets to the New York Giants. And obviously he's committed to playing, and I would think the Giants would have him start too. So
yeah, because there's no other option right now.
No.
They don't have an option. And they could draft a new quarterback, right?
Sure.
It's funny. I don't envy the people in charge that are like right now. If you're the Giant and you're the GM and you're like, we got a high draft pick, we could draft a quarterback, or we can get Aaron Rodgers, and you're like, fuck yeah, Aaron Rodgers, he's good, right? Yeah,
there's always going to be the thought in a GM's head, right, where it's like, they can fix him, but we can fix him, right? There's always that. You watched Arrested Development, right?
Yes.
You know that scene where Tobias is like, it never works, nobody has ever done it, but it could work for us.
Yeah.
That's how I view with the Giants and Aaron Rodgers. Like, that would be amazing to me.
I think it would be an amazing disaster. I don't think it would work at all.
Absolutely.
Right? Because who is he throwing the ball to? Malik Neighbors and
Yep.
Malik Neighbors. Like either Malik Neighbors is going to have the best wide receiver year of his career, or they're finishing with 3 victories the whole season, and that would be even worse than the Jets. Because look, he had some tools. I like Garrett Wilson. I know he could be a diva, but they're all fucking divas at this point, these wide receivers. Like, so like,
wide receivers want the ball, man. They want the ball.
And some of them are right. That's the thing. Like when I see George Pickens yelling for the ball, but then you throw the ball to him and he does these amazing catches and you're like, fuck, like just throw the ball until he doesn't catch it anymore. And that's what happened at the end of the season, right? He was dropping these balls and you're like, bro, you've been asking for the ball. Now you're dropping the ball. Like you can't do that shit. Like what the fuck are you doing?
If you're going to ask for the ball, catch it, right?
Any more thought? That's all I had for as far as NFL news. I mean, we could talk about the mock draft if you want, but I think there's not much changed from the last time we spoke about it. Do you have any more thoughts or opinions on as part of the NFL right now?
Not really. I mean, I did check out a bit of the combine just to see if there was anybody that kind of stuck out, and I was kind of hoping to see how Cam Scadaboo would do.
Dude, I was just gonna say that name. That guy, whoever drafts that guy, I'm saying it right here. Whoever drafts that kid, he's going to make an immediate impact on that team.
Yes, I am a big fan of Cam Scadaboo. I think he could be like classic downhill runner, just full of piss and vinegar, going to run down your throat with the ball, and he's tough as nails.
I think he brings an energy. I think if you sit him on the bench for the whole season, his energy, his charisma, his fucking willingness to just, like you said, just drive the ball, just run it down your throat. Well, when I saw him play in the playoffs, I was like, I don't know who this kid is, but whoever's drafting this kid, like, you're getting a baller in this kid. And I might be wrong about that, but I'm ready to put it. I just sometimes have a feeling I'm like, this guy, even at the combine, like you could tell, like he's like, I'm here to make an impression on people, and I can't wait to see who drafts that guy.
Excited. Me too. It's unfortunate he didn't get to do all the drills because I think he got some sort of hamstring pull or something like that during it. Not enough where you get concerns like, oh, is he going to fall out of the draft or anything like that? You know, so I was kind of hoping to see how he would do. I wanted to make note from the combine how fast some of these players are that's coming in. I believe this is the fastest set of players in combine history.
Really?
I think that was the number, like, especially because they noted it was like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the record was like 10 players that had 4.3 speed that ran the 40-yard dash, and that was beat by like 3. I think it ended up being like 13 or something like that.
Really?
So yeah, this is fast, and 2 of those players were 4.2. Right? Like one was a 4.28 and the other was a 4.29. One of the 4.29 player, Matthew Golden, I saw from Texas when he played. And Texas has a lot of speedy.
Golden ran 4.29.
Right?
Matthew Golden.
Yeah, Matthew Golden. And the fastest guy was Maxwell Hairston, the defensive back from Kentucky. He ran a 4.28. So
what?
There's some fast players here. So it just kind of goes to show as the game gets faster, you're seeing the players that are coming out of college also being faster.
Right.
So I wanted to make note of that because I was watching a little bit of the 40-yard dash. I know some people, really the NFL Combine is more of a social event than anything else. It's like you get media there, you get all the GMs kind of coming together. And yes, you could still get some value because you can get a sense of, okay, this guy's really athletic. There's something you could work with there. But obviously there's a difference between, a set lane that you have to run for 40 yards and then getting chased by a defender 40 yards. There's a different sort of mindset that you go into when it comes to running the 40 and doing other drills. But you get a sense of like, okay, this guy's footwork is good. This guy, if it's the wide receivers, this guy's hands are good. The technique of the offensive lineman. But I that's what I took away from this combine is that fast, speed. A lot of speedy players this year.
I follow a lot of athletic coaches online and Instagram because I'm just passionate about and so like interested in that topic and all these different things. And I've been seeing a lot. I follow a lot of these guys that train NFL guys, and it's all about sprinting and explosiveness. And there's been a big switch and I think a big evolution in the way they train these guys now. That's why I think you're seeing a difference at these combine numbers. That's why you're constantly seeing improvement, you're not beating all the records, but like you said, instead of having 7, 8 guys a certain standard, now you have 13, 14, 15. Then next year it might be 16, 17, 20. You're just going to grow the pot, and then it's just going to make them better. There are certain things, you guess, you evolve, you learn, you know, oh, I don't think they do things the same way that they used to, you know. I think they're a little bit more, especially with skilled players, wide receivers, cornerback, guys that you need the speed and stuff. They focus less on the strength, more on the explosiveness and plyometrics. So it's very interesting that you bring that up, because immediately in my brain, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense from what I follow and the trends that I see in physical fitness and strength and conditioning. So it's good that it's paying off, because some of these guys, sometimes when you're promoting a certain type of training, it's not always popular. And it's because you don't have, they're very rigid in their methods, right? And especially in the weight room when you come to the NFL guys. So to have a lot of them, even in basketball, I see them not necessarily go along with what the team is promoting. They have their own guys on the side, and you could see it make a difference. And I'm glad, because some people, I agree with their methods and I see where it's coming from. And so when I see numbers like that from the combine, growing numbers of faster kids, more explosive kids that could jump so high, and also I think a durability aspect, I think like that's a big thing in sports now. People these kids not only want to play, they want to play for a long time, because that means they can make more money down the line.
Right.
So I'm glad to see it. Like, I'm kind of glad we see that trend when it comes to that kind of stuff.
For sure. And seeing it translate onto the...
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of NFL talk. Let's move on to something that I don't have much to say about. NHL trade deadline was this past Friday, correct?
Yep.
I saw 2 trades that were meaningful. There was the Jets that traded for, what's his name? I forget.
There was Luke Shen who got traded to the Jets, yeah.
And then there was Brad Marchand getting traded to the Panthers. Again, someone from like me that's not really in the loop when it comes to trade rumors, and especially I wasn't even paying attention to the trade deadline. I paid attention to hockey for about a week and a half for the Four Nations face-off, and I kind of zoned out after that because I was too busy. I did watch a few games on TV the last few weeks because it was on. I'm like, it's interesting, but was this Brad Marchand thing a rumor? Did it come in as a shock? Had you heard that they were looking to moving on from him? Or was this like, because for me, Brad Marchand was one of the most hated players in the league. And now all of a sudden he's on a different team. So for me, it's kind of like, I thought that guy was going to be a Bruins for life, because he just seems like a dickhead. And the Boston Bruins seemed like the best fit to fucking play a dickhead. But I know that's his role. I'm not saying he's probably the nice guy on this side. I'm not. Brad Marchand, if you ever listen to this, sorry I called you a dickhead. I actually like you. You seem pretty cool. So what's your thought on this? And what's your thought on general on the NHL trade deadline? Did any team make moves that are going to be very impactful? Did certain teams improve their odds of winning a Stanley Cup? Like, what are your general thoughts on this?
Yeah, first on the Marchand stuff, I know there was some rumors kind of going around that maybe Marchand would be moved, but it did come as a surprise, because literally the Marchand move was announced just as the deadline was coming in at 3:00. Mm-hmm. It was like, they made a last minute trade, and the terms of the trade that they got for Marchand, it's a conditional 2nd-round pick in 2027. That could turn into a 1st-round pick in 2028. So that was all that they needed to get rid of Marchand to the Panthers.
So you think it's low?
I thought it would be a little bit higher. He's not the same level of player that he was a few years ago. He's older now,
right?
But he's still a guy that you can you would love to have on your squad,
especially in the playoffs, right? Like he's
For
a
sure.
difference maker in the playoffs.
But yeah, there's been talk already, if you follow a lot of Toronto sports media, how they're like, damn it, like Marchand's going to Florida. Because Boston's not making the playoffs this year. And it's like, oh, Toronto's like, finally, we don't have to deal with Boston in the playoffs. We don't have to deal with Marchand, right? And then Marchand goes to the Florida Panthers, and the Panthers are a big playoff team. Like, they won the Stanley Cup last year.
Right.
They're a team that could potentially, repeat this year. They have a really talented squad. And so now if you're a Leafs fan, you're like, damn it, I thought we were going to get out of Marchand. But now he's going to the Panthers, and this Panther squad is better than those Bruins teams.
Right.
And so there is that, if you follow a lot of the Toronto sports media folks. Florida certainly got better. There's been a lot of talk. Matthew Tkachuk is gone for the year, but he should be back for the playoffs. But they're talking about a top line of Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Brad Marchand dominating this Leaf squad. So that could be, something for the Panthers. But to me, I thought the big winners were the Dallas Stars, because they cashed in to try and win this year. They have a squad that is so deep, especially on their forward core. They traded for a guy, Mikko Rantanen, who's one of the top players. And Rantanen's whole thing is like, he's been traded twice in the last little bit. No one could get some sort of contract negotiated with him. But the Dallas Stars, they agreed to a deal with him, $12 million a year, which is a lot of money in the NHL. And this Dallas Stars squad, I mean, Robertson on the outside. Now they've got Rantanen. Matt Duchene, who is a lot of people's second-line center, some first-line center. Right. He's their third-line center on this team now. This Dallas Stars team is built for the playoffs now, and they're like, we have to cash in and take full advantage of this. So really deep squad in Dallas. My Ottawa Senators were pretty busy on the trade deadline front as well. They got a couple of players. There was a little bit of talk about they traded away Jacob Bernard-Docker and Josh Norris. Josh Norris was a 30-goal scorer a few years ago, but the big thing with him is just he couldn't stay healthy. He's had issues with his shoulder for the last couple of years. Really well-liked guy in the locker room. I don't know if you saw the clip there, Stefan, but there's a clip of Brady Tkachuk actually holding back tears at the press conference because he loves that guy. They were roommates, and he was somebody he could rely on. And they traded him to the Sabres for a guy in Dylan Cousins, who kind of similar in the sense that, he was somebody that also had a 30-goal season, but hasn't really gotten back to that level. But the big thing with him is that he's healthy. He stays healthy. And there has been this discussion about Sabres players where you have these very talented young players, but never seem to reach their full potential in Buffalo. They get traded out of Buffalo, or they leave Buffalo, and all of a sudden they're one of the best players in the league. Top player that comes to mind is Jack Eichel when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
Oh, the hope is that Dylan Cousins would be continuing that trend from the Sabres, where he's finally able to find that true potential he could be. He's younger than Josh Norris. He stays healthier than Josh Norris. There's this hope that with a new look and a new franchise that he gets to play for, that he could finally sort of realize his full potential and get back to that 30 goal scoring mark that people believe he could get back to. So I saw a lot of discussion about that, like why would they trade Norris? Because when you look at it on the surface, Norris is the better player than Cousins, but just from a stats perspective. But I think there's more upside to Cousins, and with Norris, there's just the concerns of it. The injuries will just continue to plague him. And Jacob Bernard-Docker was a guy who was a right-handed defenseman that was just kind of falling out of favor with the Sens, and they decided to utilize him more as a trade option. So the Sens made some moves, but it was pretty busy in terms of, everything going on before, during literally the middle of the night. There was a trade for Brock Nelson going to the Colorado Avalanche. So that's another team they've always tried to stack their teams in Colorado. And Brock Nelson was a really good player for the Islanders. Yeah,
I like him.
So it was a really, I found with some of the NHL trade deadlines in years past that, it's been kind of, sometimes you get some big moves, but this year's trade deadline has been really, really fun to watch. Who knew that in the year of our Lord 2025 that Shea Weber would get traded, despite already going to the Hockey Hall of Fame? But they traded his contract away. the Utah Hockey Club took on the contract of Shea Weber, and so that's kind of part of the contract rules there. But he's been out of the league for 4 years. He's gotten into the Hall of Fame, and he's
Why would
still
Utah
getting trades.
do that?
Because they have to reach a certain the cap floor, and sometimes players like to use contracts. So even though somebody's retired, they still have to commit to the contract to affect the cap.
Was Montreal still owned that contract?
No, now it's Utah that owns it.
Right, so Montreal just traded the
Montreal
contract?
had it. I think they traded it to Chicago, and then Chicago traded it to Utah. I don't know if they traded it between them. It might have made a pit stop because that was one of the controversies around the Arizona Coyotes before they moved to Utah. Was that Weber, like, they would take in these contracts of guys knowing that they were never going to play. Like, they took in a bunch of contracts, but they utilize a loophole so that they could get all these contracts in so that they could meet the minimum standard for the cap floor.
Right.
And so that they would ice these teams that were just, not the greatest hockey teams in the world. And you're looking at, like, are they really committed? Like, how are they doing this? And it's like, well, they're taking in retired players' contracts to try and get them through a season, trying to stay on the cheap end. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I haven't been paying attention, but I know that for the past couple of years, I haven't seen any big names get traded during the trade deadlines. But again, I couldn't probably name half the big names anymore. I still know the McDavids and the Crosbys and the Brad Marchands and all these guys because from the last time I watched hockey, like a little bit, these guys still played. But there's a lot of guys, like I said, Four Nations face-off. I saw a lot of guys that were really good that I had no idea who they were. So trade deadline's always something interesting, obviously. Or you like seeing a lot of moves so that there can be, like, the contenders can be a lot better, so it could just make it more interesting for the playoffs. Any other big news you think that we should pay attention to in the NHL for the rest of the season? Who do you have winning the Stanley Cup right now? Who's your favorite?
It's tough. There's a lot of teams that could really win it. Last year, I thought Dallas was going to win it because I thought that team was good, and now I think this Dallas Stars squad is better than last year's team. So I think they're fully committed. The favorites for me, that's top of mind. Colorado hasn't had the greatest year for Colorado standards, but they are going to make the playoffs this year. With the moves that they made at the deadline there, bringing in Brock Nelson, like, there's talk about a potential first-round matchup of the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche.
Right.
Those are two teams that could, I could see them being Stanley Cup contenders, and that could be a first-round matchup, right? So with the way that the season has gone, if you ask me today, I would probably stick with my Dallas Stars pick, but there's still many more games to go with the Eastern Conference. The Ottawa Senators are battling for that final wild card spot. The Rangers are in there trying to battle for it as well. Montreal is another team that's kind of trying to battle for that final wild card spot.
Right.
So in the Eastern Conference, I should mention. So it's going to come down to the wire. I think I will be able to give you a better idea once all the teams are in, because I really don't think that there's not, like, in the NFL, it's like, oh, it's the Patriots or the Chiefs or anything like that. It's going to be, you have some that are close to that, like teams that will continue to be competitive and teams you're like, oh, well, I could see them getting into the Stanley Cup or at least a conference final. But there isn't that one dynasty team that people are looking at. It really is kind of wide open in the NHL right now.
Well, that's good for business, right?
Oh, for sure.
When it's not just between 1, 2, or 3 teams that you could, like, one of those 3 teams, and then that's good for business. Let's move on to the last topic I want to talk about. Big matchup tonight in the NBA. You got the Lakers in Boston to face off. So 2 number 2 seeds in their respected conferences. What I really want to talk about is the Lakers even before the Luka trade. So I think that the record is crazy. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've moved their way up to the second in the conference. I thought this Luka Doncic the trade was going to blow up in their face. I know what he's capable of doing. I know he's young. I'm not a fan of his attitude towards conditioning and preparation, but it's hard to argue that whatever he's doing isn't working for him, right? He is a mega star. He is really good at basketball. And then I watched them for the past week or two, and then all of a sudden, him and LeBron are on the same page. They've won 8 in a row now. They're 8-2 in the last 10. They're facing off against one of the favorites tonight in the Boston Celtics. Yeah, I kind of have them like just becoming the like one of the maybe 3 or 4 teams that I could see make the NBA Finals and actually win a championship. You have any thoughts on this regarding the Lakers and since they've traded for Luka?
Yeah, I've been trying to keep following along with the NBA, especially after that Doncic trade that came down in the middle of the nights. Is like, excuse me, Doncic is going to the Lakers.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, you talk about it there. They're on quite a run right now, and I think they're already starting to form some chemistry there with Doncic and LeBron. And sometimes greatness rubs off on greatness,
right?
And so I think I wasn't as sort of down on Luka as maybe you are,
right?
Kind of going in, because I understand, like, he's not, when you think of a superstar player, Luka Doncic doesn't necessarily fit the mold because, as you mentioned, he's not like this superior athlete or anything like that. But boy, can that guy play basketball, right?
I mean,
just an unbelievable player that could produce and whatnot. And I think, you know, LeBron, like, still at a very high level in his career, and 40, right?
That's insane.
It's insane to see how he's producing at this stage of his career. And so when you have those two together, like, sometimes when you have two super elite players, I would call, you know, Doncic a super elite player, top 5 player.
Absolutely. Look.
So when you have two of those guys in there, like, magic is bound to happen. Some, you know, magic, no pun intended there with magic, but nonetheless, yeah, no, it's been interesting to follow. I mean, with the Lakers, you're always going to get big time coverage of them because of the market that they're in, the legacy of the franchise. And now, especially, everybody's got eyes on Doncic. It's like, you know, when the way that they've just been fueling it with the Mavericks, like, you know, the stuff that they've been putting out in there, be like, oh, well, this is the reason why he wasn't doing this, he wasn't doing that, and we're moving forward with this. Like, some of the greatest athletes, right, use that as fuel. I mean, Jordan talks about that all the time. It's like, he would find any sort of the slightest reason to kick your ass, right? Like, oh, you didn't say hi to me when we walk by in the hallway, like, I'm gonna, you know, put 40 up on you.
I think he makes a lot of those things up in his head as well. He's like, I'm just gonna make stories about this guy wanting me to lose, or absolutely. Look, my take on the whole thing is, I'm not maybe I came off as a Luka hater, and I'm not a hater. I love him as a basketball player. He reminds me of one of my favorite athletes, my favorite hockey player of all time, which was Mario Lemieux. So I grew up watching Lemieux, and for the longest time, I just thought he looked so slow on the ice, but no one could ever stop him, right? And he wasn't the most athletic guy, but he was big, strong, he could skate, and he could just get around guys. And you'd look at him play sometimes, you're like, I don't understand how this guy scores so many goals and how no one could stop him. Obviously, the defense and the speed was different in the 80s and the 90s, but still, like, Lemieux was, in my opinion, the second best player of all time for me. He didn't play as long as Gretzky and didn't have all the records and everything, but I still think he was a good player. And then I look at Doncic, and then I just, like, he gives me the same vibe where, like, you watch him, he's a bit nonchalant of his attitude, shows up to games, and it's just like, but then he'll fucking score 40 on you, and you're like, how the hell did he do that? And he'll hit that fadeaway, and you're like, I don't understand. You look as athletic. I look more athletic than you, and I'm 44 years old. Like, I don't understand this. But again, I don't play basketball at a high level. He's been playing basketball with adults since he's been like 15 years old, right? So that has to big difference with him. Obviously, one of the factors that made me go, something is fishy here, is like, why the fuck would you, sorry my language, why the hell would you trade Luka Doncic? Like, in the middle of the night to the Lakers? Like, there's something here, like this. Like, sometimes, like, I know we, like, people think like, oh, like, sports is scripted and stuff, and I always like, well, shut your mouth, like, it's But then I go, moments like this go, like, it might not be scripted, but I think there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that we'll never understand. Trades get done because of business. Basically, it's just a business, right? The Lakers are like, we need someone after LeBron. We can't just be LeBron and then have no superstar for the next 10 years because we mortgaged everything to get one championship. Look, And now I look at them and I go, maybe they'll get a second championship out of him. And then maybe LeBron will be done. And then this will be Luka's team. And then they'll be good for the next 10 years. I also look at how the Mavericks got treated in this. And now Irving is out for the season. He tore his ACL. Yep. The first game Davis played, he injured himself. He hasn't played since. Yep. So now you're like, damn, like, so the Mavericks are out of it. Now you got to look at these contenders. Now you got to look at, we're going in the stretch. You're starting to see a lot of these deals pay off. The Golden State Warriors, that's another trade. I thought Jimmy Butler, like, I used to be a big fan of his, but his attitude lately, if you're not, like, again, that's just based on the things that I believe are the right thing to do. And if you sign a contract and you say you're going to play basketball, I don't give a shit how unhappy you are with the situation. You still got to go and perform every night to just go and say, I'm not going to play and take your punishment and take your ball and stay home, basically.
Right.
But again, I watched this Luka deal, and now I look at him on this team, and I see a lot of chemistry between him and LeBron, so much that it scares me. And I'm not going to have time to watch the game tonight. I have friends coming over for dinner, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on how they're doing, because I believe the Celtics are going to have everybody on deck tonight. I think Tatum is playing, Brown is playing, everybody's there. I think it should be a competitive game, and might be also a preview of a potential NBA Finals, which I know we would all love if the Celtics versus the Lakers. You heard it here first, all right? If we end up with the Celtics and the Lakers in the finals, Savage called it first. I'm putting my name on it right now.
You're locking it in right now.
Lock it in. Cha-ching, cha-ching. One last thing I want to talk to you about. We always get this topic of choice or rant of choice. I don't know what you have on the table, if you do have something, but I'm going to go first. The Cena heel turn for the ages. I remember the last time me and you spoke about wrestling I think it was on the last episode, right?
Might have been last one, yeah.
And you said that you thought Cena was going to win. And then I was like, oh man, like, I respect your opinion so much because I know you know more. And look, I'm in the business of wrestling, but I'm in the business as a performer. And sometimes I don't. Oh, you're in the business as a commentator, you're in a different part of it. You're in the know a lot more because you have a podcast. You know, this is wrestling. So I'm like, motherfucker, like, is he gonna be right about this? And then I started thinking about it, and I went, oh, okay, I guess I see it. And my wife was like, no, that's like, oh, I won't be happy. Why? He's here. He's a temporary guy. He's retiring, blah, blah, blah. And like, get it. It's okay that you don't get it. You're not involved in the business enough. But to see the heel turn, I like to consider myself a guy that sees every angle that is possible. I did not see this thing coming. Did you see this coming?
Oh, God, no. I didn't see the heel turn coming at all.
So what's your reaction? And is this what's best for business?
See, that's interesting. That second part of the question is very interesting. So,
because you have to think of all the merch of the potential loss of revenue because the kids won't be buying his merch anymore. Are adults gonna buy his merch now to make up for the revenue loss of the kids not buying his merch? That's how far I think about it. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Like, I've seen the jokes of like "don't give up" and then getting rid of the "don't" and just saying "give up." Like, that's hilarious. But
I saw the best one that said, it was just a picture of John Cena with his comb hair and he looked real menacing, and it just said "sold out," but "sold" was written SOULED. Like, he sold his soul.
There you go.
And I'm like, bro, I don't know who made this. I don't know if it's legit. But if he comes out with a shirt that says "sold out," I'm all in.
Kind of like an old WCW pay-per-view.
Right.
Sold out.
I'm like, it's the NWO. It's the same storyline. We've all seen the storyline. The Rock teaming up with, was it Triple H or was it with Vince McMahon? No, it was with Vince McMahon, right? And like, it's just like your corporate champion. He's now the corporate champion. Yeah. So again, sorry to cut you off. I got excited.
No, there's a lot of excitement around it.
Where is this going in your thoughts? And is this what's good? I'm gonna ask you again. Is this what's good for business? Zach, is this what's good for business?
First of all, I want to say I had been calling Cena winning for months, and my co-host Lever Sage did not want to admit it. And then he had to, eat crow on the episode. He denied it on the most recent episode of This Is Wrestling. So now I am bringing the hashtag Zach was right over here onto your lovely program. But no, I looked at this, and first of all, the heel turn itself was really well done. I really enjoyed it. I thought the angle that they did and really emphasizing like Cena going into the bloodied wound of Cody Rhodes.
Right.
Really well done. And I did get a laugh out of The Rock using the throat slit. I've never seen somebody slit their throat like this.
With 2 fingers. My wife thought it was so weird. She's like, what is he doing? I don't get it.
Yeah, they did this like flick at the end. I was like, what is that, dust? Or like, what are we doing
here?
But,
like he's sweating like Italian. He was trying to be Italian. It's like, hey, just cut it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe The Rock was trying to embrace his inner Italian, but I don't know. But yeah, I thought the angle itself was really well done. Totally didn't see it coming. It was funny, like, it was in my head because I was like, man, Cena's hanging around a little longer than usual during this Rock and Cody thing.
Right.
And he's like playing up. It's like, yeah, great job, Cody. Good stuff. Blah, blah. Like, wow, he's really playing it up, but it's John Cena,
right.
Like
he's
always been a little bit on the goofier side. Yeah. So I didn't think too much of it. So as soon as he put in that hug and gave that look to Rock, I'm like, oh my God, it's happening right now. We're going to do the heel turn. And then, of course, he kicked him in the groin, and the rest is history, right? I said on the podcast, this is bold of WWE to do this right now in the middle of their retirement tour. Very, very bold. And like what you were thinking is like, man, there's like, they made merch for Toronto for like Cena's last appearance in Canada, right? It's like they're going forward with this, and there are questions in my mind because I want to make it clear I loved it.
Right.
I loved it, and I'm fascinated to see where it goes at this stage. And I might be one of the only people in the minority that is loving The Rock's introduction into this. I just like that he can go in there and just disrupt everything. Literally, his thing is the disruptor.
Right.
And just kind of screwing things up. And that I kind of enjoy that just from I don't think The Rock and Triple H are exactly, exchanging Christmas cards at the end of the year, every year. So there's a part of that I like about that. I look at the business end of it, and, you hear the comparisons, Hogan's heel turn in WCW and Steve Austin's heel turn on Vince McMahon. 2 different varying results when it comes to that, right? With the Hogan stuff, they literally got business for the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Literally years. They squeezed that sponge out of the NWO storyline so much, like it literally lasted way too long. Well, in the case of the Austin stuff, it didn't work because people didn't want Austin to turn heel and join Vince McMahon. So there's 2 kind of elements that it could go here. This could be a story where, it can carry over. The big thing with doing this as well, it's like, if it gets hot and people absolutely love this heel run of Cena, theoretically speaking, and I know it's pro wrestling and, retirements aren't exactly final in pro wrestling. So, theoretically speaking, though, Cena, this is his final year in pro wrestling. I think there's a little bit more credence to it because he has the stuff going on in Hollywood. And so if it does take off, you're not probably going to get multiple years of business success with this. You're only going to get a few months.
Right.
So from a business standpoint, I think it's bold. It's very risky. It could pay off very highly, as we've seen in years past, if it's done correctly. Because I look at all this, and this is all to establish Cody Rhodes as a top guy. Like, he's already a top guy, but really establish him as a guy, right?
It establishes him as one of the biggest baby faces, because I think that this is how I saw it. Because when we spoke last, I was under the impression, I knew that they were going to need a heel between Cena. So if I was going to go before the Elimination Chamber, if I was willing to go along with what you thought was going to happen and Cena was going to win the Chamber, I go, okay, I think I'll trust his instinct. And I go, okay, well, that means face versus face. You can't have face versus face I just don't think it works. Because then Cena doesn't, for me, it just didn't make Cena winning as a face versus a face. And now you got the Cena heel turn. So before everything happened, I thought, well, now that they've involved The Rock in this and him asking for his soul and stuff, I go, well, okay, this is a great opportunity to turn Cody Rhodes heel in the midst of his title run. Because when's the last time you've seen a champion face turn heel and still be champion, right? It's been a while. I don't remember the last time it happened. So I thought that was because to me the other option was to turn Gina. I didn't even think about it. It wasn't never a second thought. I never thought about it. I just thought because in my head I'm like, well, he's done in December, so you're gonna. For me, it didn't make sense. You're gonna turn him heel, and then what? He's gonna end his career as a heel. He's just gonna lose in December and then be on his way and boo. Everybody boos. Like, how are you gonna turn this back around? And obviously, that's another question for another day. But then I saw the heel turn and I go, absolutely. So, absolutely personally, I think this is what is best for business for the simple fact is that it was unexpected. And now from here to not only WrestleMania, but from here until SummerSlam, from here until Survivor Series, from here until whatever pay-per-view or Raw he's going to wrestle at last in December. And like you mentioned, maybe he'll wrestle more. Retirement is a loose term in wrestling, right. Retiring like Mark Henry. Yeah, this just makes me want to sit in front of the TV and see what they're going to do next. And which is at the end of the day, what their goal is. You want to bring people in and then tell the story. But as long as they're sitting in and they paid the ticket, I love it. But I see a very difficult path, I think, to get this storyline completely over in such a short amount of time. But if anybody could do it, it could be all these guys that are involved. Triple H,
yep.
The Rock, Cody Rhodes, and Cena. And we might be looking other people involved in this too, right? We don't know anything about it. I'll just end by saying this. I think this said more about how they view Cody Rhodes as a face than anything else. I think they could not fathom Cody Rhodes being anything other than the face, and I mean baby face as well, but the face of this generation, of this 2, 3, 4, or 5 year part. We had Reigns, there was Cena, the short-term Reigns, the bloodline, I mean, I think is one of the best storyline as far as length and just everything involved and all the characters that got involved. I mean, I think it was beautiful. I think it's still right now, we could still see the bloodline storyline, like it's still on, you know?
Yeah.
I think that was one of the best storylines in the history of UF/WWE. So now you got Cody Rhodes, like he's been champion it's going to be 2 years now, right? You're coming in on, he's going to be, he won the belt last year at WrestleMania.
Year. He'll soon get to a year.
Right. Sorry. That's what I meant. But I knew he ran the Rumble 2 years in a row. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Does Cody Rhodes go over on Cena and then Cena, like there's so many different aspects of it. But again, at the end, I think this says more about how they viewed how much of a babyface quote they saw Cody Rhodes versus anything else in this storyline.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I was going into it thinking, Cena would win the 17th world title at WrestleMania. Like I think I even said it on the last show, it just makes too much sense in my mind. And now with this heel turn and this heel aspect to it, I think it's unpredictable. And I think, like what you touched on there, I think that's such a good thing in pro wrestling when you don't know, and you could get enticed by both options of who could win. And then it gets people interested when you have a result that is very much in doubt, but either way has got fans interested in where it could go. I think that's a big success.
Absolutely.
So I think the thing with the heel turn, like when I look at it, when I look at the Hogan stuff, obviously that lasted a few years, and this one is probably only going to last a few months. Mm-hmm. I highly doubt that Cena's going to retire a heel. I think there's going to be some sort of storyline aspect where he gets back into that babyface front. Like he realizes the errors of his ways. I know I'm not, this is why I'm not a booker, folks, right. But he realizes the errors of his ways, right? And then turns on The Rock, and then he has that one last match. Like I pitched the idea of Cena not winning the belt at WrestleMania because and then you pull off that 17th world title win a little bit further down the year. And he kind of realizes the story being he hasn't been winning the last couple of years. He's been losing to guys. He lost to Jey Uso recently for the Rumble,
Right.
And so finally it's like I have to change things up. I got to go to a darker side if
Mhm.
I want to get that 17th world title. And then he goes, then he realizes, he loses and he realizes he can't go to that dark side. He went against what he stood for. And then later on, he goes back to the babyface side and then he gets that big world title victory at the end of the year. That's what I think that could go, but it's enticing. It really is. And it's got people excited, and they didn't do the big promo on Raw. And I know some people were like, oh, you got to strike immediate, but we're still talking about this, week 2 after that. So I think it's perfectly fine. I think people will still talk about it. It's going to mean something once Cena shows up on TV. But this is certainly, for me, one of the more interesting storylines WWE has done that I'm invested in.
Absolutely.
Because some of the other stuff that they've been booking for me hasn't really hit for me.
Yeah, I'm the same.
So, but this one is certainly hit for me, and I'm fascinated to see where it goes.
Yeah, I would be inclined of thinking the same way, where like this heel turn might be very temporary, and then they could move. I liked your idea that you pitched, but I just think people are liking this heel turn. I think a lot of people are liking Cena as a heel. They're like, fuck, finally, we see Cena as a heel. Let's see what he can do, man. Maybe he'll turn into one of the best heels we've ever seen in our lives, And
you never know.
Who knows? That's all I got to say about that, my friend. Anything you want to talk about as for your topic of choice? Anything you want to rant about? Mr. McGibbon, the floor is yours.
Well, no, funny enough, I was thinking maybe I'll bring up the Cena heel turn thing here because I was interested to hear your thoughts on it as well, because I like to get an actual wrestler, somebody that's been in the scene's opinion on that sort of stuff as well. But I will touch upon just selfishly locally where I'm at.
Yes, sir.
The Trenton Golden Hawks started their playoff series last night in the OJHL Junior A hockey, and they were able to win Game 1 yesterday against the Pickering Panthers 3-1, and so that starts their quest for the Buckland Cup. That's the big championship in the OJHL. They've gone to the finals the last 2 years.
Wow!
But were never able to beat the Collingwood Blues. They were the kind of the one team that they could not beat. And so they're trying to get back into the finals. And Collingwood is good this year, but there's another team called the Leamington Flyers that look really, really good as well. And so it's going to be fascinating. I'm always excited. It's playoff hockey.
Yes.
And the building was really fun yesterday. They were actually giving out little light sticks as well.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was really nice. And they told the fans to wear black as well. So
that's awesome.
It was really cool. It was really, really cool.
How many teams in the playoffs?
I got to think off the top of my head. I know it's at least like 20 teams in the league total.
Wow.
And it's 8 teams on each side, so I think 16 teams in the playoffs.
This is the
OJHL. So this is below the OHL.
And what's the age?
Same age as OHL players, 18 to 2, like 21, I should say, but 21, that's considered like an overager. And so it's the same age range as you would see in an OHL or a CHL, whatever you want to kind of put it as. But with everything going on, there's been a lot of discussion in the States because the NCAA has put off restrictions about getting scholarships. So players in the OHL can go now and play for NCAA teams.
Okay.
So that's opened it up. Like, one of the big advantages for Junior A hockey was that, because you couldn't get a scholarship in the US, there would be really talented players that could play in the OHL, but they wanted to go play college hockey in the States and have like a paid for education, all that. They would go play in a Junior A league like the OJHL or the CCHL. I think for you guys, it's the QJHL in Quebec. And so they would play for one of those teams so that they could try and get a scholarship over there. But now it's kind of wide open. And now you're starting to see more like a couple of players that I've called now are getting called up to OHL squads for a run. Like, there was a player that we had named Matthew Soulier who got called up to the Ottawa 67s and had a bit of a run with the 67s. So it's an ever-changing landscape when it comes to junior hockey, especially now with the rules being lifted when it comes to the NCAA on who could qualify and play for, college hockey teams in NCAA. But I'll tell you right now, like, there was a little bit of concern about like talent pool, but there's some really talented players in Junior A hockey, and the crowd was electric yesterday. It's really cool to see it, and I'm excited. I'm hoping for another deep playoff run for this Golden Hawk squad.
You've been calling their games all season?
Yep, all their home games. So whenever they come down to the dunk, and those games stream on Flow Hockey.
Flow Hockey.
So it's a big service. Flow Hockey has like AHL games, bunch of different leagues across the US and Canada, all the junior A leagues, I think, in Canada play on Flow Hockey. ECHL hockey, which is below AHL hockey, any sort of hockey you could imagine, like it's gonna be on there on Flow Hockey. So you would subscribe to that service, obviously,
Yeah.
and be able to tune into the games that way. And sometimes locally in our area, it will be broadcast on television. So it'd be broadcast
Wow.
in our area, it'd be Your TV Quinty. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. I've had a lot of fun calling the games over the last couple of years. The organization has treated me really well,
That's
and
great.
it's been a lot of fun, and the playoff runs have been a lot of fun. As we get deeper, it becomes really all consuming in a good way.
Yeah.
Because you're like, man, you're hoping that they win, right? You're hanging on to every game, and you're connected with this team, and so it's been fun so far. I'm hoping for another deep playoff run because this team looks really, really good. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. Started off with playoff hockey yesterday, and we're going to get into the grind of that over the next month or so. So should be fun.
Awesome, and that's great to hear. Flow Hockey. If anybody wants to check it out, check it out.
That's right.
Zach, thanks again for this great episode. I love our chats about nothing but sports.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the week has nothing about sports in my life, so I love just chatting. I try my best to stay up to date with all the stuff, but this week was a rough one for me. Very busy at work, and my son's baseball season is officially underway as of tomorrow with training camp. So the next months, basically all the way till October, is going to be a lot of things going on. So hopefully we could still get together on a weekly. Saturdays are always a good day, obviously, for me. That's why we've been doing this Saturday. So because it really, I just enjoy talking about sports. Obviously, it's something that comes across, hopefully, when I'm on the camera with you and talking with you again. There's a reason why I come up with all these names to call you, because that's really what I think about you. You're extremely knowledgeable, and I really respect and trust your opinion on any major sport. So I want to thank you for taking the time, being part of this Blue Collar Sports. If you haven't done so yet, people, if you're listening to this, please subscribe to SVGTV on YouTube. I got Blue Collar Sports show. I got the Savage Paulson show that we put out some episodes, Between Two Savages with Gabriel. We're just trying to pump out some interesting, inspiring, funny, all that type of content, and obviously sports related. Again, Zach, thanks again, and hopefully we talk again next week for some more Blue Collar Sports.